Good day, YouTubers, and thank you for tuning in to today's very different video on YouTube. Today, we're going to be talking about the meteorology of the UK, or the weather of the UK, as I like to talk about this. We're going to be doing a mega weather forecast. Now, if you remember on a previous video of what I've just spoken on the big vlog that I spoke on Thursday, the 21st of May, 2026, and on that week before the week of how hot it was, strangely enough, if you remember that week, it was like a prelude of just before of how hot May of 2026 was yet to become one of the hottest Mays the United Kingdom has seen and endured so far of it. And yes, the hot weather has unfortunately led to a lot of mass drownings. Well, actually, there's been quite a few people who have been drowning. I think there was, I can't really tell you because obviously I might probably spill out everything. I know it's going to cause a lot of people's, I don't know what to really say, but it's going to be absolutely distressing. But we're going to be talking about what's happening in the UK today, but also of what's going to be happening throughout this month. And we're currently on a great big battleground between of what's happening at the moment. We've just seen some relatively cool, unsettled and wet weather, especially thunderstorms. And strange enough, tomorrow is going to be heavily inundated by thundery weather. I'm not sure if it's just going to be showers or persistent rainfall. Maybe the weather forecast is going to pretty much chop and change. But anyways, yes. So let me just go ahead and show you of what's been causing this relatively unsettled weather condition. So the first thing to note, we had, okay, so low pressure is very much the dominant air mass for this week, and also for the precursoring preeminent of what's happening this month. Now, as you can see, low pressure has been the most dominant air mass, and as you can see, there's been a barrage or a conveyor belt of, well, let's just say low pressure, and it's sitting in between Greenland and Iceland, and it's also actually part of the Atlantic Ocean. So what's happening at the moment is, although we've got some continental air that's building across through, well, let's just say Central and Eastern Europe. Oops, sorry about that. That was my bad, and I had my hands exposed towards the camera lens. That was not very good of me on my tablet. So, let me put this one very much straight. So, let me just go ahead and have a look. Okay, BBC Weather does not like... Why are you not showing me the pressure chart when I'm doing it in full screen? Get your gears on, BBC Weather. Please, stop playing tricks on us. Or stop playing tricks on me. Sorry, I just had to rant here because, you know, if I push this, the pressure chart disappears. I don't understand why. Anyways, let's go back to what we've just seen so far. So we've opened the doors to some relatively cold, wet weather. Occasionally in the Scottish Highlands there will be some snow, but I'll probably presumably say, no, it's way too mild to produce snow. Maybe in the mountains, let's just say Ben Nevis, of all places and things, it might be a bit way too mild, because obviously, hey, I think the proximity, yeah, if you look at the proximity towards Scandinavia, it is very close, but I don't think it's that close. Okay, if I go up towards the very tip of Greenland, maybe Lerwick might be a better option, but then at the same time, because it's actually surrounded by the sea, that's basically the main culprit that's making it quite relatively mild than it is with Greenland and also Norway, which is actually very strange. Have you actually realized about that? One of the Shetland Isles, or the Shetland Islands. Okay, so here is, of course, a much bigger map, and of course, yes, as you can see, the places that are getting snow around June, as you can see, as ironic as this sounds, although it's the start of summertime, strangely enough, I'm starting to see some very strange anomalies. Yes, we're getting snow in Greenland, okay, and also Iceland. And let me just go ahead and swivel my cursor, way through like this. As you can see, hey, it's somehow very strange to see why Greenland and Iceland are getting just big. Well, let's just say a bit of a whirlwind zone where it's like it's whipping itself. It's getting a bit of a whiplash whirlwind of where it's like it's cycloning. It's like it's centrifuging back towards the the Arctic. Obviously, you've got Iceland and also this eastern coastal seaboard of Greenland, or this eastern part of the topography of Greenland. I've got no idea, and Canada as well. Many parts of Canada and Alaska are getting snow, and parts of Russia and also Siberia, they're getting a lot of snow as well too. Quite strange, isn't it? Let me take a look at down here. Maybe let's just say about the southern hemisphere. Okay, Antarctica is getting quite a lot of snow. Makes sense because, the rest of the summer hemisphere is basically like winter, if you know what I mean. I don't know why there hasn't been any signs of snow hitting. Oh wait, there is. If I look at Chile, up in the mountains, where the Puna ecosystems are, there are some snow. There are bits of snow. There are a few vestiges of snow. Interesting. You might think Chile is quite a hot country. Yes, it is during summer, but no. Look at that snow. Look at this little vestige of snow. This little wall of snow. Pretty interesting, isn't it, when you think of that? I don't know why, but it sort of happens. And then you've also got snow up in the higher ground mountains of the Tibetan Plateau. Hey, that's a bit strange. I mean, it sort of says to you of how high up the Tibetan Plateau is. I mean, despite how hot these areas are supposed to be, they're actually quite mountainous. Mount Everest and the rest of the Himalayas. That's why it's snowing. Okay, so you got a much more bigger, higher up altitude. I suppose it's what you call the death zone. Correct me if I'm wrong. But let's go back to the UK because I want to talk about the weather that's happening at the moment. And yes, this is what the anomaly is going to be like, or the synopsis of what this weather is going to be like for this week. Some thundery showers this week. A little bit like Malaysia, but it's not. Okay, not much improvement for the weekend, but signs of dry weather next week, later on perhaps, the later part of next week. I'll probably say subpar, because you've still got drizzle. Yeah, I don't think it's boding that well, although there's 21 degrees Celsius. Yeah, I don't think it's going to bode that well, because you've still got these, well, I'm pretty sure Sunday is like your best bet. And I wonder why you have drizzle, which is like the main precipitation. I don't even give a crap about why BBC Weather seems to get... Why? Why am I making a freaking video about the goddamn weather? How the fudge... Sorry, I'm trying to be very careful with my language here, but how in the fudge am I really going to see this as something that is perfect to look at the weather forecast? No, this is not. I think everything is going to be like miscalculated or misinterpreted as something as drizzling, when in fact, in reality it's raining. I've got no good news. But anyways, let me just go ahead and start, oh yes, scrolling it down. There's been a lot of lightning strikes so far this week. A lot of thundery activity, I suppose, but I don't think I've seen any lightning, I suppose. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yes, there's been a lot of... Yes, it's a bit unseasonable when you think about it, but we'll talk about the... Oh, I don't know what to really say, hey? But we'll go and have a bit of a delve through of just how hot May of 2026 has been like. So, yes, I knew I was going to say 2020, but 2026 is a much hotter year. May, but of course it's, hey, we've got... Yes, so what's steering through? High pressure on the Azores, which is still hovering, and what is that the jet stream is dipping further south. So if I have a look at the chart, the isobar and isopressure charts, you can start to see of how south jet stream is. It has just basically dipped down very much further south, and like this, you can start to see that. Look at that pressure chart where all of these showery events are taking place. It's very relatively potent. In fact, the deeper, darker, or I should say reddish colors are like very, very potent. Somehow, it's like it's taking a bit of a barrage here, and look at that. it's actually like nose diving to the south of the UK, and it basically marginally sort of, I don't know what to really say. Does it like miss out or something? I can't really tell. It's all really hard, but I'm probably presuming that, let's just say, the amount of rainfall we're getting is going to be quite, well, let's just say, I mean, Monday will be wet, but I think by Tuesday of next week, it might be a lower chance. Although on Wednesday, it might be moderate, I guess. Thursday might be a bit, I'll say moderate, I guess. Friday is pretty much the same. Saturday might be like lower because we've got drizzle. But I think it'll be better, I think. I don't know. That's just how it is. I think BBC weather sometimes can be a bit of a furphy sometimes. It just seems to predict whatever the hell it thinks as it is. It thinks as it is, but when it actually doesn't. You never know what's going on. Right, let me just go ahead and take a look at the jet stream itself. As you can see, the jet stream is very much still dipping further south, but there are some implications that, oh, okay, it's just started all over again. Maybe if I speed this, you can see how it's clocking up. It's actually shifting all its way. You can see how potent, it's actually drifting very fast. You can see how it drags along all of this unsettled and cool weather via the Gulf Stream, as you can see, across through the Atlantic Ocean. Look at that. It's just, basically, it just keeps on doing the same thing over and over and over again. It goes on and on and on. And when you look at that jet stream, it is just going completely wild. But if I scroll back to what has just happened so far, maybe I need to know what's happening on the 19th or the 20th of June. Maybe things will start to improve. Okay, so I'm looking very carefully, noticing that the Azores High is trying to its way through, bringing a bit of warm air. But I don't think that's going to be like, I don't think it's going to work. So who knows about that. So I'm just going to scroll this one way through. Yeah, the Azores High, which is that high pressure area, is trying to ridge through. I think it's trying to get a bit of dry weather, but then it sort of struggles. The jet stream sort of breaks up apart. And then at the same time, if I do just that, you can see it's, okay, it's sort of breaking up a bit. But then once we get in towards this way, okay, the jet stream is actually dipping. It's actually dipping even more further south. This is a very messy picture. I don't even understand what's going on here, eh? Or there's even another scenario. If I look carefully on the top, there's a very rough and ready picture that maybe this jet stream is starting to break apart, allowing, as you can see, maybe this could be a very interesting weather pattern. Like, imagine seeing this. You know, you got two areas of the jet stream, okay, so it sort of splits into two, right? You get like 1/3 of this jet stream here is sort of like connected, and then once it just breaks off and just dies off completely, it just basically splits into like two jet streams. Maybe this one here is probably the one that's going to face up the north. I don't know what that is. Maybe I'm sort of thinking there could be like a, let's just say, a bit of a heat wave like condition, and then there's like a big Spanish plume that's like drifting up northwards. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. And that's also sparking me some various confusing anomalies or different predicaments of what might potentially happen for this year's summer. So I'm sort of thinking that maybe it could either be a wetter and hotter than average summer, but most weather forecasts have cited on the idea that this year's summer might be drier than average. But is that really true? Can we really trust in that predicament? No, because we don't exactly know. So let me just go ahead and start looking, and let's just start taking a look at what's happening. Let me just go ahead and have a look at, yeah, the internet's being very, very slow and a bit lazy somehow, but yes, we have the, oh, look at that, someone's got blue hair. Okay, yes, and there's also this here as well. More heat waves likely as warmer than normal summer forecast. Why am I saying summer as in like a Brummy voice or a British voice? I should have said the word summer. That's how I say it. Summer and not summer. That's a bit too British. I'm more into my Australianism, okay? Right, so As you can see, we've got what looks like to be a girl or a woman with blue wigged hair, or let's just say it's actually a bit of a rainbowish sort of hair. As you can see, I can see blue with green. It looks like some sort of weird stock image, as I like to call it, eh? We've got like blue, green, and orange and pinkish looking reddish hair, but we can't go into that further, I suppose, eh? So, yes, that's a nice picture of a crane on that fan. Why am I seeing so many things? Okay, apart from flowers and trees and birds and fans and like that. Okay, so much of the UK was gripped by a spell of unusually hot weather in late May. So that's very interesting to know. So, yes, I know there's been some very, very concerning messages about the drought that might be potentially happening, from this year's spring. And there's also been some debateful news reports of the fact that maybe, who knows, there could be some more heat spikes this year. Are they becoming more common? Yes, because of climate change and global warming. And later on in this video, we're going to be talking about our newest and latest nemesis that has been brought up from a long period of time, which played a big role during the big Australian bushfires from 2019 to 2020, which killed and dispersed, let's just say, 3 to 4 billion animals. That's what I'm probably guessing. But anyways, so here it is. The all-time record-breaking temperature for May in the UK, which is of course, which was of course less. I don't know what to say here. So it's probably about last week's May. I need to go ahead and drink some freaking water because I can't even talk properly when I'm just rambling about weather and things. So yes, what has been happening? Last week we had some very unusually potent warm air from Africa, some unusually potent hot air from Africa. So if I go back to the full screen, so what was happening was, okay, so here is North Africa, more specifically the Sahara Desert, and what we had was that the jet stream was actually rising up north, attracting and basically luring in these high pressure systems that were dragging all the way north. They're actually going all the way north from like places like Morocco, Spain, Portugal, and France. You've got countries like Senegal, which many people would probably say, hey, Senegal doesn't bring out that Saharan air. It's pretty much like a little margin. I would probably say places like Mauritania, Niger, and Mali seems to get the Saharan air because of where it's at. And basically, that air mass just sends temperatures, and look at the temperatures of Timbuktu. 41 degrees Celsius. Look how bloody hot this is. It's basically like a giant blowtorch bloodbath when you think about this. Look at that. 41 degrees Celsius in Timbuktu. How in the hell could you very much imagine that while blessing the rains down in Africa? Who knows about that? Yeah, it's interesting. I never knew Dakar could get high 20s during June, which is quite unusual. But anyways, for me to clear up my freaking throat. Right, so we had some relatively hot air, and it was like a heat dome that basically trapped within us in the UK for quite some time, and it basically trapped us within a week, starting from, when was it, Thursday or Friday, and it was like emigrating northwards, I suppose it was emigrating north, and it basically stuck on for about at least, I'd say 10, 11, 12 days, possibly 13 days, and yes, right before the beginning of June, which was like May the 31st, and what we had was that the cooler air at that time, it was actually quite relatively further away. Obviously, this is the air mass that we have currently now. We're basically dipping south. Okay, so if we were actually rising up north, if the jet stream was hanging up a lot more north, then it would have attracted a lot much more hotter air to go up all the way across from Iberia and the rest of the Mediterranean to the UK, which would have been a fairly interesting idea. And that was the event that was happening last week. Okay, so it was more of a heat dome. A very interesting heat dome that we had around late spring and the earliest types of summer. Normally, what we all know is that during May, we tend to get like the very last vestiges of cold weather. And I think the coldest that we had was the 4th of May and the 11th of May of 1941. I don't know why. It might have been a bit of a cold snap at that time. And then in June, we had a cold temperature about minus 5.6 degrees Celsius around the 1st of June and the 3rd of June 1962. I don't know why it might have been cold at that time. Maybe it might have been the last vestiges of winter covering the earlier parts of summer. It's like Disney's Frozen all over again. I don't know why I'm referencing that franchise. It's like winter is coming. It's like something out of Game of Thrones, but who cares about that? But yes, it is not that unusual to see why we can get relatively shocking hot temperatures in the future, like, I wouldn't say like every 5 years or something like that, but roughly like that, I think. 40.3 degrees Celsius in Coningsby, Lincolnshire during July. But yeah, it's been quite stunning so far, Okay, so let me just have a look at the temperature anomaly for June. So far, the hottest temperature ever recorded was in the 29th of 1957, the 29th of June 1957, and the 28th of June 1976. Famous for that eponymous heat wave that everyone remembers. 35.6 degrees Celsius. I don't think that temperature might be beaten this year just because of the weather conditions that we're having at the moment. But let's go ahead and straightforward, talk about what's happening around in America. Okay, I might as well just do a jump cut. Okay, we are now landed in America. Of course, yes, everyone knows that the FIFA World Cup event is basically happening next week. And look at the temperatures. They are now currently into an equatorial sort of state. As you can see, they are now approaching 30 degrees Celsius, and even more so, they are reaching to a deadly 35 degrees Celsius. And look at the nighttime temperatures, the minimum temperatures during the morning and also nighttime. Look at this. It makes it so similar to Malaysia. And you know why? It's so humid that we've got a couple of reasons. Probably it's to do with how hot the Gulf of Mexico has been. But let's take a look at the jet stream all over again. Right, let's take a look at the jet stream and see what's going around across through America. And let's see what's going here. Let me just talk about the jet stream in the United States of America and see what's going on. So here is the global jet stream map. So we all know that the UK has been dipping furtherly south. And let's take a look at what's going on here. And also temperature. Let me just do a combined view. Okay, this one doesn't seem to work. Alright, I don't know why it's running slow, but what we do know is that America is seeing some relatively bone-shakingly hot temperatures. Some roasting barbecue sort of temperatures, I have to say, hey? And if you remember on a previous video, the reason why America was absolutely cold during May of 2026 and April of 2026, to be very frankly enough, as strange as it sounds, there was like the last vestiges of some polar air coming all the way down from Canada. And that was the main reason why, places like Scranton in Pennsylvania saw like temperatures down to an abysmal 17 or 16 degrees Celsius. That's actually very much the exact same sort of temperature that we're having at the moment. That sort of temperature range, which is just very weird, considering that, hey, we are literally dipping, we've just got ourselves dipped and lured in by a very sunken down sort of level of how low, the jet stream is. In America, apparently, I think the jet stream has faced a little bit more northwards. In fact, a lot more northwards. Okay, I think this one's been very troublesome. So I might as well just pretty much quit over this freaking jet stream because it's a pain in the neck to see why it's been relatively. Okay, let's see. Worldwide map. Okay, let's take a look at the map. Okay, so let's see what's happening. Okay, this is of course of what's happening around 2026. So as you can see, the jet stream has been rising up northwards, and that's actually delivering all of that warm, if not hot air that's actually from the Gulf of Mexico, and it's actually traveling quite a long way off. So as you can see, there's been a very nasty and gnarly heat spike, a very deadly heat spike that has been approaching across through St. Louis in Missouri. And I'm pretty sure not only it's because it's inland, but also because of the fact that it's actually very close towards, well, it's actually hundreds, if not thousands, I would say hundreds of miles away from the Gulf of Mexico. It's actually close to like various states like Tennessee and South Carolina. Very subtropical, if you ask me. But let's take a look at the weather in Chicago and see if that makes a bit of a difference, since we're focusing on the Great Lakes. Now, as you may have noticed, Chicago is still very much facing a thunderstorm problem. But what you may have never ever noticed is that the temperatures are now starting to skyrocket up into the high 30s, which is absolutely very shocking and bone-shockingly crazy, considering that a few weeks ago, around the middle and the later part of May, there were temperatures down to like 17, who knows, about, I don't know, 18 degrees Celsius. I mean, what's going on with this weather whiplash? It's a freaking miracle. Like, I could never think about this complete weather chicanery of what's going on here, eh? One side of it, it's, one country being the UK, we're now inundated by some relatively cool, unstable, and relatively unsettled conditions. And on the other side, America is getting some relatively, although there's a lot of thundery activity around the United States of America, at the same time, there's been some very significant bits of warm, in fact, a lot of air. That's actually crazy. Can you believe it? Sitting around the Great Lakes, I wondered why in the fudge, without even swearing, would this part of the United States be relatively hot than it is in the UK at the moment. I mean, this is giving me some very strange messages. Why in the fudge America is so freaking hot than it is in the UK? If anyone can explain me on this, please do so. So, yeah, there's been a lake effect. Maybe the main reason why it would have been cooler during May was because it would have been like some sort of lake effect. Maybe there was a little bit of let's just say polar air masses coming down all the way from Canada, and that would have subdued these temperatures to, let's just say, the mid to high teens. Okay, let's take a look at Burlington in Vermont. Okay, I can't see it. Wait, I can't even see it. Let me just see Vermont. Nah, that's not gonna work. Right, let me just go ahead and try Scranton, Pennsylvania. Right, let's see about this. Oh, wow, 30 degrees Celsius. What the fudge? Bloody hell, America! Why the hell are you so hot? Why? Oh, why? Oh, why? Okay, I don't know why am I saying a little bit weird. I'm saying the word fudge as in the F word. So there you go, we've got low pressure that's basically around in the middle part of America, which I've got no freaking clue that is, and I would have probably presumed that the jet stream would have been a bit further north, right? I can't even give a freaking clue of what the hell am I really talking about, because the weather in this whole video is a complete and utter track. Oh my crikeys, I mean, look at Canada, look at yellow enough in Canada. It's basically shivering cold. Well, not shivering cold, but feeling like it's a little bit, well, I'd say, comfortable. It's chill, but not too cold, right? So, as you can see, Scranton and Pennsylvania, up to the 30s. Now it's pretty much getting some thundery downpours. Hit or miss. And of course, yes, as you can see, nearly approaching the 30s. What's going on? What in the hell is going on? It would have been a lot of hot weather coming from all the way from Mexico and that sort of thing. I'm probably presuming that sort of event. It's crazy when you think about it in so many ways. It has been very unusually, I think last month we had some very relatively cold air, and why we've now gone back into much relatively average hot days in Pennsylvania. which is actually quite interesting. Let's take a look at Harrisburg, which is also in Pennsylvania. Ooh, 32 degrees Celsius. Now that's tropical. Okay, so as you can see, it's a little bit southwest of the state. Someone knows about the. Actually, it's a bit southerly, I think, which is quite interesting. Now, I would have also probably presumed by having a look at the latitude of where part of America is, basically, interestingly, around, let's just say, 95% west of the United States of America. Well, I would say 90% of the United States. Not counting Alaska, I'd say 95 or 96% of the rest of mainland America, that being the United States of America, of course. As you can see, the USA, as you can see, the UK of all is actually very much north. It's actually in the same latitude as Canada. But just because it's in the same latitude doesn't exactly mean it would have the same temperatures as either in Canada or even the United States itself, the mainland part of the US. I mean, it's kind of a bit strange seeing how the mainland part of the US is actually about the same latitude as Spain and Portugal. And also Africa, actually the Saharan part of the African continent, which is actually quite strange. I never knew why. That's kind of interesting if you ask me. Yes, very, very strange. I don't know how we've got to the point where the jet stream. So let me just go ahead and search. Why is it in Scranton? Okay, let's take a look at this. There's been a combination of high pressure systems, basically main cause for hot air to deliver into Chicago, St. Louis, and Harrisburg, as well as Burlington in Vermont. Actually, I need to have a look at the weather forecast in Burlington in Vermont. I haven't really thought of that one yet. Okay, so, wow, oh my crockies. That is a bit of a strange thought. Look at, look at Burlington. Wait, that's not, wait, hang on. Where in the freaking hell is Burlington? Vermont. Where in the hell is Burlington, Vermont? Okay. So it's just, alright, I see what it is. Alright. Alright. That is. Oh, okay. So it's a tad cooler. Let's just. Oh! You gotta be freaking kidding me! Very interesting. I don't know why. So let me have a look at the, I don't know which one is it. Maybe this or that. I can't really tell. So let me just have a look at the AI search of what has been researching for me at that point. Yes, it's been a lot of thundery activity so far. Let me just go ahead and type in yes. Okay, why? Okay, I'm just going to go back to the AI mode, check and see where we're headed to. AI mode history, am I signed out? Okay, let me just see. I'm going to have to type this one in. Why is the main cause for the hot air to be delivered Scranton, Harrisburg, Burlington, and wait, hang on. I just lost my freaking mind. It actually turns out I already have this tab because it was okay. There you go. So what we have is a sprawling heat dome that combined with an atmospheric transport pattern pulling tropical moisture from northwards. It's from the Gulf of Mexico conveyor belt that has been moving up and the bypass. So this massive high pressure ridge is strong enough to push the polar jet stream far up into Canada, preventing cooler Canadian air masses from moving southward to offer leaving the entire corridor from Missouri up to Vermont vulnerable to extreme heat. Good make them take off their goddamn blazers! Right, sorry, I didn't mean to be so horny and sexy. If I was, YouTube is gonna take a complete pretty much take me into court. Believe me. Right, let me just go ahead and start typing in something. When will the polar air masses come back south again? Okay, let's see when they will come back south again. Let's see. Late October or November. So, yeah, it's not work. Of course, indeed. I suppose, hey? Yeah, a short-term relief. A 1 to 2 week window. Yeah, I suppose, hey? But, hey, nevertheless, I suppose, hey, let me try and go back to... So, what impact does these hotter temps in Scranton, Harrisburg, Burlington and Vermont, what else do we say? St. Louis and Chicago have with the jet stream and the UK weather? So let's see what happens. Okay, I don't want to sound like a complete freaking expert because obviously this seems fairly too complex and I would have sounded like as if I was cheating so far in the video. So the hotter temperature from the Midwest of the United States of America through the Mid-Atlantic up to New England is a major energetic catalyst for the North Atlantic jet stream, and because there is an interconnected global conveyor belt, extreme heat on the US East Coast directly to the type of weather the UK receives 3 to 7 days later. So, look, the massive high-pressure heat dome trapping hot air over these American cities forces the jet stream to bend drastically. Instead of flowing smoothly from west to east, the jet stream is focused to determine or to detour thousands of miles north around the top of the US heat ridge. Okay, so this dramatic buckling creates a highly wavy jet stream pattern across the Atlantic Ocean, and when the jet stream becomes excessively wavy, it tends to store, which can cause some European blocking pattern in the UK, trapping weather systems to place in for weeks at a time. So supercharges Atlantic low pressure systems. That's what it does. Indeed, as you can see, it is. Alright. Okay, this seems fair. Alright. So alright, as we can definitely tell this. Let me just says again. As the intense tropical heat pumping through Scranton and Burlington pushes up against is still sitting over northern Canada, it creates a sharp, volatile temperature boundary. Temperature contrast, a greater contrast like rocket fuel, or a greater contrast acts like rocket fuel for the upper level winds. Okay, as the supercharged light jet stream shoots off the east coast of the US and tracks across the Atlantic, it behaves like an atmospheric conveyor belt, rapidly spinning up like this and intensified low pressure storm systems. Okay, number 3, the direct impact on the UK weather. So, depending on exactly where the triggered, well, actually, the jet stream bends as it reaches across Europe, the US heat wave triggers typically one of the distinctive weather outcomes from the UK. The most common scenario is scenario A, which is if the supercharged jet stream fires straight across the Atlantic and aims directly at the British Isles, those intensified low pressure systems with it, and this brings unseasonably turbulent weather characterized by heavy rain, strong winds, I was going to say Wayne, like Elmer Fudd, and cooler than average summer temperatures. Essentially, the US gets the stagnant heat, while the UK gets the stormy exhaust. Very interesting. Sometimes a massive, this is scenario B, a massive atmospheric ridge over the US causing a mirroring effect downstream can also cause the jet stream to buckle wildly north over the US, which it may plunge south over the mid-Atlantic and then buckle wildly north again right over the UK. And if this happens, the UK inherits its own high-pressure system, often an extension from, of the exhaust high, pulling hot air from Africa and mainland Europe to trigger a UK heat wave. And of course, see how this current US system is shifting the transatlantic I can't even. I was gonna do a photo, but then we can now evaluate how the US system transatlantic winds by tracking the Met Office jet stream forecast. Okay, sorry, that was nearly going to be. I was going to say "farewell" as in the farewell, but I'm just eased off by that idea, I suppose. I can't do ideas. Oh, sorry, that was my YouTube channel. Hello, that's my YouTube channel. Oops, sorry, I didn't need to show that. Right, let me just go ahead and type in. So, during the May heat wave, how was these areas feeling at that time? Okay, let's see what was going on. In the May heat wave, how was it at that time? So, yeah, exceptionally cold. Triggered a sudden summer. That's actually very interesting. So, yeah, I may not need to. But yes, there's been a very strange. Yeah, that's quite weird when you think about that. I never knows why during mid-month where temperatures rocketed above well seasonal averages. I would say that. Yeah, it's been the coolest start to May since 2020. Yeah, that's interesting. I knows that. So, yeah, that was very interesting, isn't it? That's quite weird when you think about that. Skipping the entire spring season in a matter of 48 hours or 2 days. So, yeah, that's very weird when you think about this weather whiplash during spring. Okay, so yes, that's very, very weird. I never knows why there's been a complete fight against the United States and the UK, fighting over which weather really felt the best. So, yeah, it bore the brunt. So, the 34 degrees for the Midwest, for St. Louis and Chicago. But then, of course, yes, I think there was some earlier frosts around that month. Yeah, it was really cold, and then, yeah, strangely enough, that is strange. So yes, what happened during early, mid, and late month? I'm quite curious, I suppose, about this. So the unseasonably hot spell, yeah, okay, so we all know what's going on. A stubborn trough in the jet stream kept cold Arctic air plunging southward directly out of Canada. So that was the chilly reality check. And then the sudden summer flip. So when was it mid-month? So when was mid-month? Okay, I can't really tell which was mid-month. 11th of May to the 20th of May. So what happened to these parts of America of what weather? Okay, I'm quite curious. So let me just see. So there was like a high pressure heat dome that became firmly established. Not sure if that was great. So there was like a heat wave that was sort of locked in. Okay. 31 to 34 degrees Celsius. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it worsened the sea. Oh, well, that's quite weird. It worsened a spring drought. That's quite weird. And then there's been some severe thunderstorms at that time. Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't look at that one very properly, I guess. Maybe these thunderstorms were bringing down some temperatures down to like, high teens. No, I haven't really looked back at that one properly. I might have to make another video about this. It's pretty much too hard to talk about this spring weather whiplash. But hey, let's go ahead and talk about something that is brooding right over in the Atlantic Ocean. Well, actually, in the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, we've got what's called a sudden El Nino effect. Now, of course, yes, everyone has been talking about the Super El Nino event that we've been talking about. I feel, well, I should say, I'm not that nervous or scared. It's sort of scary by talking about this event, this sort of Super El Nino event, I suppose so. Let me just go ahead and examine what's happening at the moment. Let's take a look at the map of what's happening around with this map. So this is, of course, yeah, I'm very much the sort of person who talks about what's happening with this. So this is 2026, of course. So what's happening? Okay, so what's going to happen is that, hey, with this El Nino effect, that will be happening around the later part of this year. So what's going to happen is Australia is going to have some severe bushfires during, what we had in a very similar fashion to what we had back in 2019 and 20, which killed and dispersed so many animal deaths, including 3 billion wild animals, I suppose, both wild and domestic. I can't really tell. Yes, there would have been some drier than average conditions across Australia and also Asia in general, India, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia in general, and possibly the northern parts of the Amazon in South America. But then at the same time, you've also got places like East Africa getting and also the southern parts of the United States getting much wetter than average conditions. That's going to be extremely difficult to really say about this, but it is going to be highly likely. And yes, as I said earlier on before, this El Nino effect has been amplified by the significance of human-induced climate change, and it's been rapid. We had a 1.5, let's just say 1.5 degrees Celsius increase above the average temperature. It seems like the central Earth temperature has been induced thanks to climate change and global warming. And we've been hearing about this. I've been hearing about this so much, and it almost feels like a giant podcast about this. And it's been, I have to say, hey, it's kind of very much, yeah, I can definitely see what's going on here. So there's an 80% pie chart of what's happening, this probability of what's going to be happening. Let me talk about the El Nino effects that might potentially happen in the UK. So if the UK is going to be felt by El Nino, well, it won't be that much, because obviously we are further away from the Pacific Ocean, because we are still in the Atlantic Ocean, as always, as per usual. It's been sitting there for ages, as rigid as a stone or a giant rock. So, as we all know, hey, thinking about, yes, we could get hotter and drier summers, but we might also get milder and wetter winters. On the opposite, it might be La Nina's turn to get like cooler and wetter summers and colder, snowier winters. Although that might be totally and utterly wrong, hey? But I think that's what I'm feeling like, I suppose, hey? But yes, let's go ahead and straightforward move away from this El Nino BS, because obviously we don't know what's happening at the moment. And as we all know, the sea surface temperatures have been skyrocketing high because of human-induced climate change. Nervous to know, but that's how it is these days. So, more heat waves likely as warmer than normal summer forecast. Well, don't let this title bog you down, because this is going to be a constant confrontation of whether this is going to be a hotter than average summer, combined with the fact that it might be drier than average, or it could either be wetter than average, like what we had in 2024 and 2023. I'm pretty sure about that. But yes, I have to say, hey, I think last year's summer was an excellent summer of just how hot and dry. And yes, I was by far the only person alone to predict on the fact that we're going to get a drought-like condition during summer of 2025. Well, we had that, didn't we? It was around during, the spring of 2025. Amazing for the fact that we had a lot of prolonged dry weather. And that was actually exceptionally, let's just say, higher than average. We had much, much bigger than average spells of dry weather. Very interesting. I never thought of that to happen. Very, very interesting in so many ways. Hey, definitely give 2025 a good tick of just how hotter and drier and the summer it was than average the summer was. I have to say that. But hey, great credits on them. Well, I'm off to probably leave this video here. It's actually getting way too long for me to try and make videos like this, and unfortunately, long videos don't always seem to work that much for YouTube these days. But quite a very special weather sort of video, because I never thought that we can just go back to somewhat unsettled conditions from that time of where we had some relatively hot weather. And mind you, that has been very interesting. I might talk about how in the fudge, without even saying the F word, would America would bring such hot weather if it was shivering cold. That's a very strange temperature normally. Battlefront, I have to say, a battlefield, I have to say. Anyways, I think I need to stop here because my tablet is getting overwhelmed and it's running out of juice. So if you really enjoyed in this video, please give this video a very good like. Subscribe for more flip-flap videos like this in the future, and please do stay tuned. If I am going to be making delayed videos, that's it, that's final. But if I have some good, decent amounts of time, I will be able to try and make a video that relates into on how, again, the UK and the US will have an impact of what's happening at the moment now. Okay, so who knows? It's scorching hot in America. It's freezing cold in the UK, but I wouldn't say it's that Arctic-fied, if that's a word. Anyways, as always, thanks so much for watching, and bye for now. And mind you, that's going to cause a lot of heated debates on my great big YouTube channel. I'm sure about that.